The 5 best All Blacks moments of all time. Yes, we've done the 5 worst moments. Now it's time to turn the tables and look at the 5 best moments. Now this list might be slightly controversial as it is mine and my own, but I would love your opinion. Comment down if you agree with me. If not. Anyway, let's kick off. In number 5, I've gone with an individual performance. Now, you're probably thinking it's Jonah Lomu against England, maybe even Mark Ellis with his 6 tries against Japan, but I actually go with Dan Carter against the British and Irish Lions in 2005. It is seen as one of the greatest performances of all time and one of the best individual performances of all time. He scored 33 of the 48 points in the second test in Wellington for New Zealand to win the series against the British and Irish Lions. Now, obviously, this was a series where there was the dump truck incident in Game 1, so it took a little bit of the shine off it, but still in Game 2, Dan Carter really announced himself to the world, and it sits back as probably the best performance in modern rugby ever still, and I think maybe one of the best performances we ever see on a rugby field. Moving on from a player, I've now selected a game that really stands out for me, and that's the 2000 Test in Sydney in Stadium Australia. Many consider this to be one of the greatest tests, if not the greatest test ever as well, and the fact that the All Blacks came away with the win that day against fierce rivals, the Wallabies, is why I've put this on my list. 110,000 fans crammed into the Sydney Olympic Stadium, watching the first test of the new century of the All Blacks against the Wallabies. What makes this game so good is the early lead that the All Blacks jumped out to. In the first 5 to 10 minutes, they jumped out to a big lead, only to be chased down by the Wallabies by half-time. So at half-time, it goes in at 24-all. The Wallabies then hit the lead in about the 73rd minute, only for Big Jonah to score a try right on the bell to win the game for the All Blacks. And what is regarded as the greatest test ever, in my belief, is the greatest test ever. So now we've got the greatest individual game by someone and the greatest test. Both have to be in the All Blacks' top 5 moments. And number 3 on my list, I take us back to 2013, when the All Blacks were the first team in the professional era to go undefeated. So throughout that whole year, in 2013, the All Blacks didn't lose a game. Started with a series at home against, a mid-season series at home against France. There they won the first game 23-13, then 30-0, and then 24-9. They then went to Australia and beat the Aussies in Sydney, 47-29, played at home at Westpac and beat the Aussies again, 27-16, to lock up the Bledisloe. Continuing on with the Rugby Championship, they beat Argentina at home 28-13, went to beat South Africa at home 29-15, went to Argentina and won 33-15, and then finally beat South Africa at South Africa 38-27, and Australia at home 41-33. They then had their end-of-year tour, which started in Japan with a 54-6 win. Then they went to France and won 26-19 in France. Went to England, beat England 30-22. And then in one of the most famous games of all time, I also believe, the Irish 24-22 win, where we had the Irish winning the first time the Irish would have beat the All Blacks in a very long time, if ever. And the All Blacks stormed back. Dane Cole's offloads in the last tackle for Ryan Crotty to score in the corner after about 5 minutes of phase play, and then Aaron Cruden steps up to take the kick, misses the first one, but he gets an opportunity to retake it, retakes the kick, and makes it to give it the New Zealanders a 24-22 win and one of the most famous victories for the All Blacks to wrap up one of the most famous years ever for the All Blacks in an undefeated 2013. In number 2, we have the 1924/25 New Zealand Rugby Tour of Britain, Ireland and France. The Invincibles, as they are, nickname was given to them. This is a time when New Zealand again went undefeated for a whole year, a whole tour in this stage, and what can probably be described as one of the greatest tours of all time, especially for those days back then. Between September 1924 and February 1925, the All Black team there played 32 games, including 4 test matches, one against Ireland, England, Wales and France, where they won all 32 games, scoring 838 points and only having 116 points scored against them. The 4 test matches were against Ireland and Dublin, which they won 6-0, Wales and Swansea, which they won 19-0, England at Twickenham, which they won 17-11, and France in Toulouse, where they won 30-6. Probably the most famous touring party that you'll ever see. You'll never see a tour like that again. Now, this is probably where the controversy comes in. And number 1, I've selected only one Rugby World Cup year. So obviously the All Blacks have won it in 1987, 2011 and 2015. The year I selected is 2015, and I'm going to explain why I didn't select the other ones. Now, 1987, I think the first ever World Cup is a great moment for All Blacks history. Obviously, South Africa not there, although not at the peak of their rugby either. So it was more an Australian was likely to be the opponent in the finals, but didn't make it. But I guess because it's the first one as well, and maybe again recency bias, it's on me. But I think because it's the first one, you if no one really knows what a Rugby World Cup is about in the first one. 2011, it's obviously quite famous and quite a big moment for everybody. But there's a lot of questions, especially about that final. The French were right in it. It wasn't convincing a final win. Even the whole campaign wasn't convincing. It was at home soil. So 2015 really highlights to me was the best, I guess, winning World Cup for the All Blacks. They started in pool play where they beat Argentina 26-16, Namibia 58-14, Georgia 43-10, and then Tonga 47-9. They then had a quarterfinal against France, which we all know is a massive hoodoo, and won 62-13. So a big statement sent there. A famous semi-final against South Africa, one of the better games of rugby you'll ever see, a 20-18 win, and then to beat, arch rivals Australia 34-17 in the final. That highlights to me, I guess, how big of a tournament that was. We backed it up after 2011. It was clear cut that we were the best team at the world. It was so structured. It was so All Blacks like that 2015 final. And you'll never forget no one's going to catch him as Beauden Barrett scoots away to win us the World Cup against the Wallabies. I just think for me, that one personally highlights. I remember 2011 very fondly, and probably in my head 2011 means more to me than 2015, but when I look at it, I just go 2015 was actually a better moment for New Zealand rugby. It was everything that was New Zealand rugby, the history, the present, the black jersey, the mana behind it all kind of built up, and I feel like the 2015 Rugby World Cup showed what All Blacks was all about. So that's my top 5 All Blacks moments ever. I would love to hear what you think, if you think there's better moments out there, if the 1987 World Cup, because I wasn't born yet, is actually a better moment than maybe the 2015 World Cup. Anything else? Should I do this for another team? I do have a Wallabies one on the way, so don't write that down in the comments. But as always, if you've enjoyed it, please feel free to subscribe if you enjoyed it, like, and let me know your thoughts. For now, thank you for joining me. I've been the Sports Booth. We'll see you later.